Greg Ehrenberg here with Adam Scherer. It's another NBA injury report video. And once again, it's going to be pretty heavily weighted towards not players who are actually injured, but recent trade situations. And there's probably going to be more to come, at least according to reports as of right now. James Harden potentially could be traded, and that's kind of holding up the entire trade market right now as teams are just trying to see where some of the dominoes fall. So don't be surprised if more big trades happen between now and the time the slate starts. Like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Anything that changes, leave a question in the comment section below so I could answer it later in the day. And be sure to check out the deeper dive and live before lock. We have a little bit more information. But let's get into some of the players that are on the injury report or have been traded for today's 6-game slate. Starting with the situation for the Cleveland Cavaliers, because Caris LeVert was recently traded to the team. He's expected to make his debut with Cleveland, but at the same time, Darius Garland is questionable. Brandon Goodwin is questionable. Garland's been out in recent games. Goodwin's been starting in his place. But what do you think is going to happen with the Cavs' backcourt minutes if neither Garland nor Goodwin play, but with LeVert debuting?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of moving parts here because we don't know exactly what the plan is for LeVert. I assume that physically, I don't think there's any reason he wouldn't be able to play a lot of minutes. It's probably a matter of, how much like his familiarity with the team. But if you're talking about Garland being out and Goodwin being out, I assume that you would rather the Cavs would rather have Caris LeVert out there kind of just playing like pickup ball than most of the alternatives anyway. So if they're both out, I think it makes LeVert look a little bit better, but he's also still really expensive. So I think it's going to be difficult to prioritize him one way or the other. The spot that probably ends up looking a little bit more interesting, depending on how things break, is $4,200 Rajon Rondo. There's no guarantee that he starts if Goodwin and Garland are out, but he certainly could. And if he does, I think that would be an indication that you're likely to get, mid to upper 20s from him in playing time at 4,200, which would be pretty appealing. If he comes off the bench, he still has a path to potentially playing like 24 minutes, but I think that it becomes a lot riskier because we don't know, how that's going to play out. Like they still have bodies to where they could just have LeVert run the offense and Rondo backs him up and guys like Stevens get more minutes, or, you could get 24 minutes from Rondo. But if he ends up in the starting lineup, I think Rondo's a good value. If he comes off the bench, even if Goodwin and Garland are out, he's risky, but would still have a ceiling.
Yeah, and then just something else to add there is if he comes off the bench, he could have marginal value, but keep in mind, this is likely to be a slate much like we had last night. There's going to be a ton of value available. No reason to play fringe value plays, and we have really good value plays available to us later. The next injury situation I want to talk about here is Dosunmu, who's out for the Chicago Bulls. He's been a shockingly good rookie over the last month or so. He's had to move into the starting lineup because of various injuries the Bulls have dealt with. Now Chicago in the backcourt, it's starting to become pretty problematic because Caruso is out, Dosunmu is out, Lonzo Ball is out. Is there anybody here that you really think picks up enough steam in the backcourt to be worth playing at a cheap price?
I think Kobe White's the biggest beneficiary. I still don't think that there's a lot of usage or anything opening up. We're not talking about Dosunmu, vacating a lot of usage that White's going to step into. But Dosunmu's been playing a ton of minutes, and we got 26 or 27 minutes from White in his return. So I think it's likely that you're getting north of 30 minutes with Dosunmu out. He's 5,100 on DraftKings, has a fantastic matchup against Charlotte. So again, like you can't treat this like the Kobe White from last season where, he would step in and have a 24% usage rate. I don't think that's going to be the case. But at his price tag and in this matchup, just being on the floor for 30 plus minutes is going to be appealing.
Yeah, and then the other thing too is maybe a little bit more assists for guys like DeRozan and Levine, because there's just been such a big playmaking role that's been thrust on Dosunmu with all these guards out. And he's been a guy who's pretty regularly been putting up, big assist numbers. Somebody else is going to take on that distribution role. I'm moving on to the Charlotte Hornets now. This is a team that's really shorthanded on the wing because they're without Jalen McDaniels. They're without Gordon Hayward because he got hurt as a uber chalk play in the Hornets last game, to where he goes up to I'm trying to remember if he was going up for a layup or to defend a shot, but either way, he ends up landing on his ankle. Gary Trent Jr. rolls into him after he rolls his ankle. Then Hayward's just on the floor, rolling around, holding his leg and yelling. And then Gary Trent on the next possession falls and lands on top of Hayward. Again, that aside, Gordon Hayward, it seemed like a pretty severe injury. He's going to be out for a while. And then also James Bouknight isn't expected to play. Cody Martin isn't expected to play. So this looks like a team where there is a lot of minutes to be picked up on the wing. Who do you think picks up the bulk of them?
Yeah, and this is also a team that, it's the opposite of what we talked about with Brooklyn yesterday. Knowing the tendencies of these coaches, and when guys are out and teams are shorthanded, do they just go further down the bench or do they condense their rotation? And all season long, when they've been shorthanded, Charlotte has just played a more condensed rotation. You saw it in the last game Ish Smith still only played 8 minutes, even though Gordon Hayward missed most of the game. He played 3 minutes in the second half. They essentially ran a 6-man rotation. So I'm expecting more of the same here, especially because, like you said, Martin and McDaniels are out as well. So if they were to go down the bench, you're talking about getting to guys like Nick Richards, Scotty Lewis, guys that really are nowhere near the rotation for this team. So I'm expecting a ton of playing time here. I think that, and you've also kind of had falling prices too. LaMelo's price tags come down a bit. So I think there's a ton of playing time available for Ball, Bridges, Rozier, Oubre. Washington probably plays alongside Plumlee a lot at 4,900, makes him look pretty good. He is also being rumored to be traded. So there's some chance that Charlotte's even more shorthanded today than we're expecting. But it really just, all 6 of Ball, Bridges, Rozier, Oubre, Washington, Plumlee are likely to play a lot of minutes.
All right, next we have the trade situations to talk about. But first, the NBA Injury Report is sponsored by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. We have a great partnership with Yahoo. If you guys have not signed up yet, click on the link in the description box below. Head on over to Yahoo, make a deposit, enter a contest. You get yourself 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Get access to all of the tools you need to build winning NBA DFS lineups, projections, ownership projections, our Boom Bust tool. There's a lot of really useful data we have behind our paywall. All right, now we have to hit on 2 of the trade situations that we do know about that are likely to be impacting today's slate. That is going to be the Portland Trailblazers and the Sacramento Kings. First, starting with the Portland Trailblazers, I have to add in, we don't know for sure that these guys are going to be out, but it stands to reason after they were traded yesterday, or traded for yesterday, they're not going to be available yet. But Josh Hart, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Thomas Satoransky, those are all guys that I'm considering as out for now, but not officially ruled out, so we'll see what happens. But under the assumption these guys don't play, who are the best players to look at from the Trailblazers? They were a pivotal team for us yesterday.
I mean, to some extent, anybody that's active, because if those guys are out, I think you have 9 guys for Portland. But what we saw yesterday is we saw Justice Winslow play 33 minutes. That was a little bit more than I was comfortable projecting for him, because prior to that, he hadn't played more than 26 minutes in a game this year when he was on the Clippers. So I wasn't sure physically, what they were going to do there. I think there is still some risk in assuming he plays the same number of minutes tonight on the back-to-back. You certainly could take a few minutes off of him. But either way, even if you were to get like 28 minutes from Winslow at 4,500, he's going to look like a good value. Same can be said for CJ Ellaby, who's likely to play 32 to 34 minutes. Macklemore probably plays 30 plus. All of their salaries increased, so they're not the same just plug and play type guys that they were last night, but they still look like good values. Trendon Watford and Dennis Smith Jr. I think a little bit riskier in terms of playing time, but also guys that look like solid point per dollar values. In terms of production, you should see increased production for Anthony Simons, for Yusuf Nurkic. Both of those guys have taken on very big roles this year without McCollum or Lillard.
All right, now moving on to the Sacramento Kings. I know people love themselves a good conspiracy theory. There is no way that this was a legitimate ankle injury that De'Aaron Fox has been dealing with, because when do we see a time where a guy misses almost a month with an ankle injury, comes back, convenient timing too, right after they trade Halliburton, he comes back, 0 minutes restriction, 36 minutes for De'Aaron Fox in his first game back. I think they were kind of waffling. Do we want to trade Fox? Do we want to trade Halliburton? I think they thought they were going to be trading Fox instead of holding him out of the lineup, but he played yesterday, looked totally fine. 35% usage rate, played 36 minutes. No concerns there with him, but we do have the traded players, Jeremy Lamb, Domantas Sabonis, Justin Holiday. I don't assume any of them are going to play today. Then we also have injuries right now. Mo Harkless is questionable. Marvin Bagley is questionable. Rashawn Holmes is questionable. Adam, I understand there's a lot of variables, a lot of moving parts here on the Kings, but what potentially stands out the most to you from a value perspective?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a team where hopefully we get at least a little bit more information when they release their injury report today. It hasn't come out yet since they're on a back-to-back, but assuming that the traded guys don't play, you still have Mo Harkless, who left yesterday's game early. If he's in and in the starting lineup, I think you're probably getting so if Bagley is out and Harkless is in and starting, I would think you're getting around 24 minutes or so from Metu. At 4,200, it makes him look fine. But I think there's a chance that people kind of overreact to his playing time yesterday, which was in part a result of Harkless being injured. But if Bagley and Harkless are both out, you should get Metu in the starting lineup playing a ton of minutes and looking arguably like the best value play on the slate. So he goes from looking, I think, good to great, depending on the status of Bagley and Harkless. If both Bagley and Harkless are in, I think Metu is risky. But as long as one of those guys is out, I think he looks pretty good. Assuming Rashawn Holmes doesn't play today, Damian Jones looks fantastic. Probably is the best value on the slate. He would, again, be competing with Metu if those guys are out. But you had Holmes scratched for personal reasons last night. My assumption is those personal reasons are he's no longer going to be on the Kings come tomorrow. So you're getting, more minutes from Damian Jones. He's cheap. He's been a viable play even as Holmes' backup. And then now you're just getting more playing time. Len becomes the backup center at 3,200. He is a viable option as well. Doesn't look as good as Jones, but still looks like a good point per dollar option. And then, in the backcourt, you're just expecting a lot of minutes from De'Aaron Fox and Davion Mitchell. We know Mitchell's usage is going to go down a bit, playing more minutes alongside Fox, but still pretty cheap for the amount of minutes he's going to play.
Yeah, and I think that is a pretty reasonable way to look at it at Rashawn Holmes. I would assume the Kings try to move him. I was looking through this team and trying to figure out what their starting lineup could be when everybody's in. And if it's Sabonis and Holmes starting the front, it's just no floor spacing because Davion Mitchell isn't a good shooter. De'Aaron Fox isn't a good shooter. And then you just have a situation where it's like you're going to have Harrison Barnes as the only three-point shooter in the entire lineup. That would be a disaster from a floor spacing standpoint. So I'm with you. I think Rashawn Holmes
probably. Too bad they don't have somebody like Buddy Hield.
Yeah, I mean, where do you find a guy like Buddy Hield, though, right? It's impossible. Those guys don't grow on trees. Where are the Kings going to get one of those guys? They don't exist. So it's the Kings. I mean, I don't know what their goal is. They're a team that's trying to win now, but not optimizing that, but also hurting their chance to win in the future. So Kings, we'll see what they do. A lot of moving parts here. A lot of moving parts on this slate. More trades likely to happen. Like this video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Any questions you guys have at all, leave them in the comment section below. Good luck, and hopefully we have a fun trade deadline because it looks like this one has a lot of potential.